Leading think tank has warned that rising interest rates could cause the economy to contract in future. Latest figures from the Office for National Statistics found Consumer Price Index inflation, or CPI, dropped to 6.8% in the year to July. A comedy show featuring the comedy writer Graham Linehan that was cancelled at the Edinburgh Fringe has now found a new venue. Ticket holders will be informed of the location for tomorrow's show shortly before it begins. Speaking to GBNews earlier, Graham Linehan said he thought the days of comedians being silenced for their views were over.
They could have given me a chance to exit the gig and allow the other acts to perform. They could have done it without defaming me on their Instagram post as a bigot, which is the first thing these people always do. So, you know, unfortunately, we are beginning legal proceedings.
Now, junior doctors in Scotland have voted to accept a pay offer from the Scottish Government. That means they'll receive a pay rise of 12.4% and it's going to be backdated to April. Scotland's Health Secretary, Michael Matheson, says he's very pleased with the result. And also pleased with the result, the Prince and Princess of Wales have congratulated the England women football squad, who are through to their first ever World Cup final. The Lionesses beating Australia 3-1 in Sydney, with Ella Toone scoring England's first goal in the 36th minute. Australia equalised through Sam Kerr in the second half, but Lauren Hemp and Alessia Russo put England 3-1 up. England now face Spain in Sunday morning's final, and the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has called for a bank holiday if they win. This is GB News across the UK on your TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, the show where comedians tackle serious news stories while trying not to get in serious trouble. I'm Nick Dixon, the People's host, as I'm known, and I'm here. That's such a big laugh, I almost can't do my job. I'm too funny. And I'm here with one of the cheapest double acts in the business. It's Lewis Schaefer, that's not him, and Paul Cox, that's Lewis Schaefer. All right, perfect. How are you both doing?
Great, thanks, Nick. The People's presenter.
I came up with that, yeah. How do you feel about that?
How do you feel about it? It's completely untrue. There's nobody less in touch. I know you come from the people, you come from up there in Cumbria, wherever you come from, and you should be the people, but you're the most arrogant, out of touch.
Well, that's not true. That is not true.
That is totally true. He's like, I call him the mad genius, and...
Yeah, no, Lewis thinks I'm like that because it's sort of projection, I believe, is the therapy term, because you know, Paul, I'm just a normal guy.
You've always made me feel very welcome.
There you go, you see. So who's more mad, me or Lewis Schaefer? I'd happily do that poll on Twitter, to be honest with you.
Yeah, all right. OK, well, do the thing on Twitter.
All right, we'll do that. But first, maybe we should have a quick look at the paper, since it is called Headliners. So let's have a look at Thursday's front pages. So the Daily Mail goes with Gym heist at the British Museum. There it is. The Telegraph, priceless jewels stolen from British Museum. The Times, Sunak, I'll ease the squeeze. Massive optimism from Sunak there. The Guardian, PM stands by pension triple lock despite surging costs. The Mirror has the History Girls, not sure. Oh, the football, presumably. And the Star, dreaming of 66, another football one. And those were your front pages. So, Paul, we're going to start with the Daily Mail.
Yeah, we're going to go straight with the headline on the Daily Mail, which is Gem heist at the British Museum. Now, what can I say about this story? Not a lot, really, Nick. I mean, it doesn't say who, it doesn't say when, it doesn't say how. It just tells us that it happened and not to worry because they're all over it like a flannel. However, I mean, it is quite a serious story. They seem to have sacked someone on the basis that things, gems, jewellery, have gone missing from a store cupboard, things that weren't necessarily on display but have been stored and were either found to be damaged or missing. What they don't say is, obviously, who, because it's an ongoing investigation, But you normally say things like, you know, this was found in so-and-so's bedroom, or, you know, the suspect's garage or whatever, but it doesn't go that far.
Well, they're being a bit careful, but they seem to sort of have an idea of an individual who we believe may be responsible. And you know, some people would say, lefties would say, you stole all that stuff anyway.
Yeah, I avoided that.
But of course, yeah, we should avoid that because we earned that stuff going around fixing the world, all right? And the other thing, though, that struck me, Lewis, is it's just quite a funny story. It's kind of like, it's not funny, really, but it's kind of like the kind of movie you would be an extra in, you know what I mean? A night at the museum, everything's stolen.
Yeah. I did a movie. I did a movie there just the other day. Quite a big movie. I forget the name of it. And,
Huge, absolutely
well,
huge.
it's almost like The Story. I did a movie there. I don't remember the name, but it's a ridiculous story. The fact is that because you let people are horrible everywhere, not just in this country. People here in this country are horrible, but all across the world, you can't trust people with stuff.
Welcome to GBNews. I love the way Lewis is on GBNews and he just says people in this country, GB, are horrible. He just doesn't care at all about the brand.
You. No, I'm saying
I represent the people of Great Britain.
It's like me. You go to my house and you can't believe how many of the mugs I have stolen. I've got a million of them. The reams of paper.
I can't believe that.
Everybody steals stuff. You're in a museum. There's nothing to steal except for stuff.
Lewis, haven't you been escorted away from jobs by the police in the past?
Actually, that is.
And you think I'm crazy? Well, I've got evidence.
Why do you remember that?
Well, I remember things you tell me, Lewis, and I put them in a little file to use against you later.
Well, actually, twice in New York that the police actually were called.
I mean, that's the kind of people we have to work with. So, basically, yeah, it's a bit of a... You know what, Lewis? It's a little bit of a non-story, to use your catchphrase. Because we don't know much about it.
Anybody could call it a non-story. It's a non-story. It's a non-story.
OK, well, let's move on. I mean, it could be important, but there's not that much you can say. Someone's nicked some stuff, maybe.
Yeah,
oh, you've got something?
No, I can't say anything more than we probably should give it a little bit of gravitas by saying it is the British Museum.
That's true.
It is expensive stuff that was 3,500
That's true,
years old.
and it's a disgrace, and I, for one, am appalled.
Yeah, we're against all forms of stealing.
That's true. It's against the Ten Commandments. Let's have a look at the, what, we got the Daily Mail next, then?
Are we talking about that?
No, what we have
we're still going to
stay with the Daily Mail.
I
However,
understand.
We're going to say with the biggest story of the day. Now, I don't know if I'm alone on this. I think I might be, but I'm overexcited. I'm excited by the Lionesses winning today, beating the Aussies in their own backyard, and progressing through to the Women's World Cup final. I know David Beckham got in trouble for calling them girls. That is outrageous. I'm not sure what he's supposed to call them. Perhaps it's footballers who are able to give birth. I don't know what the true answer to that is.
They're brave women.
It is fantastic. I mean, I watch a lot of sport. I love football. I like men's and women's football. The standard of the women's football this year has been very, very good, comparatively speaking.
And that's great because you're legally required to say that now in Sadiq Khan's London. I mean, I just want to say I love the women's football. It's amazing. They should be paid at least as much as the men, probably more. And they're brave and amazing. Lewis, that's my position anyway. What's your position?
Well, my position is exactly the same as yours. I mean, like you said, we have to. The fact is, it's girls' football in America. In America, the boys over 15 team beat the women's national team in America.
So this is what...
So it is. I'll take the heat. I know Nick doesn't want to get involved in this, but I'll take the heat. It's nice. These girls. I mean, I'll tell you something. I looked at them and they're very good looking. They're very attractive.
Outrageous misogyny. Go on then.
Let's just add a little bit of balance because genuinely, right, this is the problem with this. Politics has got involved and comparisons get made. If you compare women's football with women's football, this is an extremely good standard. The whole fact.
Women's football with women's football.
Yeah, but if you compare Lewis with Lewis, it's a good standard. I mean, that's a terrible. So you can't use that for.
But what you can only do is judge it by its own merit. I mean, what doesn't help is what's her name in the States now? The
Rapinoe.
Yeah, who missed the penalty recently. Yeah. She's created this whole storm. She thinks what she's done is create a legacy for herself and help propel women's football into the future. All she's done is created huge problems that they'll now spend the next 18 months, 2 years fixing, and football go on again. I really hope England go on to beat Spain. Come on, England.
Yeah, but you know what, Paul? It has been politicised, but that's not really our fault. It's just, you know, in the Sadiq Khan Mate campaign, where men were told they were just inherently evil, the one thing that came up in it was the evil misogynist guy was saying, oh, I'm not sure about some of the women's football. And the others went, it's actually pretty decent, mate. So I'm not sure you're even allowed legally to not like women's football in this country. And we saw Ed Davey post this incredibly cringe photo he's been getting hammered for on Twitter, where he's like enjoying a pint. It's like, I'm just a normal man enjoying my pint and watching the women's football. And Keir Starmer's done one. isn't it a weird political thing that, one, there's all the pay gap stuff we have to talk about, and we all just have to like the women's football and have an opinion on it, and isn't that like why it's been made political?
I think so, and I don't know if Lewis wants to come in here. It doesn't look like he does. I would you know, all I would say is that it's a shame that on today, when England's women's team has made it through to the World Cup final, we're actually talking about those points. I don't think we would have talked about that had this whole transformation of women's football taken place in 2003
right.
or 1994. It's mental now, so everything's got to be identity politics.
Culture war. Yeah, you're right. All right, what about the Telegraph, Lewis?
Oh, the Telegraph. Come back to school. That's Keegan begs absent pupils on results day. And this Gillian Keegan, she's the education secretary. She's bemoaning, I don't know if that's the right word, she's bemoaning the fact that students aren't going to school. And last year, 28% of the students took at least a month off. And she's saying, you know, please come back to school. And she said, this is the funny thing. She said, I wouldn't actually describe it as truancy. I think what's happened is, with attendance, is that a lot of young people have lost their confidence. The fact is, they've lost their confidence in the educational system in this country because it's been 100% lies. Same thing in America, 100% lies for the last 3 years. And they say, why do we have to go to state schools, schools that are owned by the state, that are just going to lie to us?
Yeah, and it is.
And we have no future.
And it is the legacy. That's good. Nice uplifting message for the 5 a.m. viewers. It's it's the legacy of COVID again. It was absurd shutting down the schools. She's saying here that people should dig deep and come back to the classroom. How mad is it they have to dig deep just to go to school? But I don't blame them, because they got out of the habit with this ridiculous closure.
Also, do you know, I very rarely get anywhere near offended. It's impossible, really. But comments like that almost offend me, because these are the arbiters of this problem. They created the problem, and now they're saying to these youngsters, who they put through the mill and back like nobody else has been put through before. And I've got, you know, personal experience of this with my daughter. She missed this happened when she was in year 6 and she went into year 7, and that's, for those who don't know, is the bridge between primary and secondary education in the UK. And you know, she did struggle. She's now back on an even keel, and everything's great for her. But there's a lot of kids that were forced back into homes that were not the best place for them to be, that they were unable, parents were unable to look after all the children in the way they needed to, they were unable to educate them in the way they needed to, and at the end of the day, about 3 children out of millions of children were particularly made unwell by this disease, and there is no way they should have done what they did with schools.
You're right, it was terrible. Let's have a quick look at the Times, Paul.
Yes, Sunak, I'll ease the squeeze. Now, this is the PM has told the Times he's optimistic. He'll tame inflation with discipline on public spending and tax. And he's never not delivered on anything else, Nick, so I see no reason not to be excited about this.
OK, yeah, I mean, what do you think, Lewis?
What do I think? I think it's he's just saying he's really optimistic. He passionately believes. He thinks that you're going to start seeing the prospect of wages growing faster than inflation. He has to be optimistic. He doesn't have a chance in hell. He doesn't represent the true Tory voter in this country.
That's true.
And so
no, you're right. It's not. It's a bit of nothing, isn't it? It's a bit of fluff, really.
Right.
He says it's going to be discipline and on public spending, but that's always what Sunak offers, and that hasn't really done much so far. Nothing against him, but it seems like a kind of nothing story, really. All right, let's do the break then. That's it for part 1. But coming up, politicians enticing children. I'm not sure what that means. China's birth rate collapses, and why people in Wales and Northern Ireland need extra help. Not my words. It's in the papers. See you in a minute.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GBNews,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Nick Dixon, still here with the nation's favourite double act. It's Paul Cox, or Lewis Schaefer first. Oh, he's gone for a wide shot. Lewis Schaefer and Paul Cox, there they are, both together. Classic double act, the new Morecambe and Wise on a budget. So let's get into it. And Prince Mohammed bin Salman is set to visit the UK. One of my all-time favourite boxers, Lewis.
Yeah.
That's a ridiculous joke.
I know that that's a joke. I know, because I don't follow boxing, so I don't know. It sounds like
huge figure in this country.
Well, it's a lot of people. They have the exact same name, especially in those. And some of these countries, they have very few names. Like,
no comment.
They have, I don't know, is that racist or something? I don't know. I think it is.
No
anyway,
idea.
so this is a whole article in the Times where the Times have basically done a review of British and Saudi Arabian politics and economics, because this guy Salman is making a visit in 5 years, and basically
first visit in 5 years.
First visit in 5 years, and I think they want to take people's minds over the fact that the guy is probably a murderer.
Yeah,
it looks like he is. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it.
I've got no idea if we're allowed to say that.
They got a lot of money. And
you might have just insulted the whole sort of kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which is not. You don't want to mess with them, really.
I might have done it, but on the other hand, the Saudis have basically given two fingers to America, say we're going to do whatever we want to do. They're planning a war against Iran, possibly, from what I know, and they're making friends with Israel. So the whole thing is up for grabs.
Well, I'd like to distance myself from Lewis's comments, and I'm big friends with Saudi Arabia. But yeah, it's a question, Paul, is how far, obviously there's the Khashoggi thing, very controversial, and how far, where's the line? Because you have to have diplomatic relations with countries, China, Russia, whichever your favourite one is to name. So where is the line? What do you think?
Well, this is the sort of thing that really exposes the culture war for me. I mean, if we've learned anything, the way to move on and heal things is with a £1 trillion investment programme, irrespective of what they've done. That's one thing we've learned. It will fix anything. You can do anything. If they brought Adolf Hitler back now and he fixed child cancer and gave everyone £1 million, they'd rewrite history. So we do know that there is a lot of cynicism in the business world, in this world. I mean, I'm not sure that he murdered anyone. He's not the sort of guy that would do that, I don't think, Lewis. I'd just like to say to everyone out there in Saudi Arabia, along with Nick, we all travel separately.
People.
Great people.
Yeah.
Great people of Saudi Arabia.
But yeah, you're right, Paul. The question is, we've got this cost of living crisis, our economy's tanking. Can we afford to have morals? That's really the question, isn't it?
No.
Like, we've got this great New Deal, guys. And don't worry about the Khashoggi thing. That was ages ago.
Yeah.
That's basically it.
We can't afford to have morals, and we won't.
We won't. It looks like we won't. Anyway, OK, I think we've pretty much dealt with that story. Let's probably be issuing a lengthy apology to an entire country later on when someone tells me to, but let's do the Telegraph. And families might have to pay taxes they thought they'd avoided. Sounds like they're using my accountant, Paul. I'm joking, he's great. Go on.
You've done another apology.
Yeah.
A bunch of personal apologies coming after the show. So HMRC crackdown on home loan schemes sold by top advisors could cost individuals thousands. So this is all, for me, about inheritance tax. It's about people trying to avoid it. Now, inheritance tax is the most cynical and cruelest forms of tax, to tax the dead to prevent their own family. Now, we might differ on this, actually, because this is quite a conservative... I don't know if this is a conservative point of view, but for me, I am all for the people that are trying to avoid this tax, and the fact that they are going to get caught after thinking they've avoided it makes me feel very uncomfortable.
I'm with you, Paul. I mean, this person died in January 2011, more than 7 years after she'd set up a trust in 2003, and then why does that have to go to the government? They want everything. I mean, surely, Lewis, this seems very un-American.
They have the same kind of taxes in America. I generally agree with Paul, but on the other side, this is somebody who has the money to set up a trust. They have a lot of property. They have children to leave it to. These are people who have everything going for them. I hope they die.
Well, some of them already have, Lewis, so you're in luck. But many years ago.
But the point is...
Just because they're good with money doesn't mean that they should have it taken away from them, though, does it, Lewis?
No, it doesn't. But because I'm bad with money and I have no money, I know the people out there are thinking this guy's a rich New York Jew, but...
No, they're all thinking Lewis is bad with money. I'm pretty sure.
Are they thinking that? If you think I'm bad with money, then...
then tweet Lewis. Yeah, Lewis Schaefer. There it is. Yeah, but Lewis, the thing is, these people may have been rich, but this seems to apply to a lot of people who aren't rich. Your parents work hard, they work all their lives, they pass it on to their kids. Why shouldn't they? And then the government's like, we'll have a piece of that. Why?
Well, are you talking about inheritance taxes?
Yeah.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, the thing about taxes is they take a little bit of... It's like they're collecting water by taking a little bit out of the rainwater, a little bit out of a river, a little bit out of the bathtub, a little bit out of the ocean, and so people don't notice. At the end of the day, I'm with you. Death to the government.
OK, not quite what I said, but I love the way Lewis asked me. You're talking about inheritance taxes. Like, yep, that's what the story's about. That's what I was talking about. Let's do The Guardian. And China's fertility rate dropped to a record low in 2022, probably due to the one-child policy, not to be confused with Lewis's one-child he still speaks to policy. Lewis, what do you think?
I speak to both of them. They don't necessarily speak to me.
I meant Jonathan.
Oh, Jonathan. Oh, that child.
Yeah,
the other one.
Problem child.
Oh, the other one. Anyway, we haven't had a chance to fight with each other. China's fertility rate dropped to a record low in 2022. Estimates show. Where are the estimates coming from? They're coming from the Chinese government themselves. They cannot be trusted. According to my personal sources, which come from watching lots of YouTube videos on this, China has lost perhaps... They've lied about their numbers consistently because it has to do with how rich the country is and whether they've got enough manpower to fight all these wars that they want to fight. And they might have lost 100 million people, and that they're basically crumbling. And they might have only 10 years before the entire country collapses. I'm not making this up. This is what I've actually heard.
Okay.
I'm not even predicting it.
Yeah.
But it comes from the death of love. This is what happens.
It's the death of love, and it's also authoritarian policies. I mean, they're under 1 billion, or predicted to fall under 1 billion. That's tiny. That's nothing, Paul. And also, but isn't this a result of this one-child policy, 1979 to 2015? It's a long time. They did 36 years of this. They didn't predict... I'm surprised at China, because actually... What's happened now is it can't just be the one-child policy, because birth rates are a problem across loads of countries, from Western countries to Japan and Korea and so on. But it can't just be that. But I'm surprised China didn't predict that the sort of new war is going to be about birth rates, in a sense, because China's so smart, but they've missed the point that countries with dwindling birth rates will suffer, and they'll have to bring in all sorts of people, and they'll struggle, whereas countries with higher birth rates will win in the longer term. I don't know, that was a bit of a rant for me. What do you think?
No, you're absolutely right. And this confuses me. There must be some Chinese proverb that clever people like yourself, Nick, are aware of, that I'm totally unaware of. But China China.
China.
They always seem like they're ahead of the game to me. I'm always suspicious when they get it wrong.
Yeah.
This feels like they've got it wrong, and I'm like, have I got it wrong? Because this feels
or is
like...
this misinformation, you think, and they're actually double bluffing?
Well,
they've got loads of people, billions.
You can't be a superpower with a dwindling population. That's just a matter of fact, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You've got to keep building your armies. You've got to keep capturing land. You've got to keep your resources. You can't do that if you're losing 1 million people every year. Now, of course, it would take probably more like 100, 200 years for this to get down to any sort of terrifying level.
No, much sooner than that.
Well, a million a year, and how many?
But it's not 1 million a year. They're lying about that. There's a whole generation of people who have 1 kid or no kids, and they stop. It's going to be a matter of as few as 10 years, I've heard. Here's the thing. The thing is that what China did was China put all their wealth into building apartments. Tiny, tiny little apartments. And they took people from the countryside where they had lots of kids and lots of room, and they put them in these tiny apartments. And that's the single biggest factor for people not having children. You look it up. I'm not.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I just want to correct myself and fact-check myself, like BBC Verified, because actually I said it's going to fall to 1 billion before the end of the century, so that's still quite a while off. So I jumped the gun a bit on that one. But it's one problem with authoritarian governments. They do these things that are quite sort of short-sighted. They punish their own people, but then you end up with low birth rates. And I also think, not that China's done this, but in the West, we're so obsessed with climate change, we've missed the big thing, which is going to be low birth rates.
Yeah.
And if you listen to people like Elon Musk, richest man in the world, not me saying it, he says that's the real problem.
Well, you can also prove declining birth rates. It's very difficult to 100% prove that CO2 is causing...
Are you a climate denier, Paul? That's
I'm
what
not
I'm
a
hearing.
climate denier. I'm someone who believes in climate change, but I don't believe that we should be so terrified about it that we all think we're going to die next week.
I agree. All right, just before the break, let's do one more. In the Times, and pupils in Wales and Northern Ireland had extra help with their A-levels. I personally find the implications of that offensive, Paul.
Yeah, the reputation of A-levels and GCSEs have been undermined because teenagers in Wales and Northern Ireland had extra help this year, a leading education figure has said. However, what they do go on to say in this story is that they've had extra help because they didn't have extra help during the pandemic, where I can only assume English and Scots kids did. So the outcome of all of this across England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland is we've got 3 to 5 years of fabricated GCSE and A-level results. And they've not just been going up every year, they've been going up by step increments, whereby teachers have been able to award results based on essentially what they feel about the student. It's all about feelings, Nick. You know, we're all about feelings here. And we found ourselves in a bit of a crisis with this. Now, I was trying to have this conversation with Lewis beforehand. I don't think that at 16 this overly matters. I think that you can, I never knew what I wanted to do at 16. I was in my 40s before I knew what I wanted to be on GB
I thought you were going to say I was in my 40s at school. I was like, that's an exceptional amount of being held back. But, I mean, what does this mean that that pupils in Northern Ireland and Wales had measures in place to recognise their lack of support during COVID? Did they have a particular lack of support during COVID that this is making up for?
Well, it's not 1,000% clear in here, and 1,000 out of 100 is a lot. But what is clear is that there are obviously measures in place that... Because don't forget, the pandemic wasn't anything to do with COVID. It was about devolved governments competing with one another to prove they were best at managing a pandemic. So what happened to that is the kids got used as pawns. Nicola Sturgeon had her own TV programme for 6 months.
OK.
Sorry, Lewis.
That's all right. No, Lewis, in minus 40 seconds, what do you think to this story?
What do I think? I think it's centralisation. That's what this story is. It's like you're letting huge organisations, the Wales or Scotland, decide the education for everybody in the entire country. I think people should make their own decisions about education.
It's the centralised death of love. That's it for part 2, but coming up, Graham Linehan's show that was cancelled is back on. And speaking of cancelled shows, we discussed the concept of Jewface. No idea. See you in a minute.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. After a relatively dry and fine day today, that will be continuing into Thursday as well, and even into the overnight period. A good chunk of Wales, central southern areas of England, even Northern Ireland, holding on to some late sunshine and clear intervals overnight might allow for some mist and fog patches to form. Across eastern areas of England up towards Scotland, we're going to hold on to the cloud a bit more, so turning a bit murky across some higher ground routes, but temperatures generally holding up around 13 to 15 degrees Celsius in our towns and cities. A bit of a cooler, fresher start in some rural areas. And generally on the grand scheme of things, a lot of that cloud will begin to burn its way off once again, and we'll start to see those sunny intervals developing, and it will feel warm once again. We will, though, start to see a much more of a breeze around tomorrow compared to today, so that's going to make it feel cooler, particularly along some eastern coastal areas, but further inland through the Midlands down towards central southern areas of England, generally rather warm. High pressure, though, is not going to last into the end of the week, because this area of low pressure out in the Atlantic is going to start to drift its way in as we head into Friday. So some heavy outbursts of rain, perhaps some thunderstorms pushing in first thing across Wales, England into Northern Ireland as well. That will tend to peter its way out, so Scotland generally staying largely dry with some sunny intervals. But we've got further rain on the cards as we head towards the end of Friday, turning quite windy around some coastal areas as well. Into the weekend, though, a bit of a northwest-southeast split. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not
believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. Let's get straight into it with the Mail and the Comedy Unleashed Edinburgh Fringe show with Graham Linehan, which was cancelled by deranged activists, is now back on at a secret location. So if you know where it is, don't say, Lewis, it's secret.
It's at the caves.
Okay.
Oh, no, I just made that up. I don't know if that's true or not. Anyway, Graham, there's all caves there. Graham Linehan show organizes move acts gig and tell ticket holders to expect a last-minute email. This is the big news, and this has to do with us. It's huge news.
Involves our leader, Andrew Doyle.
Our leader, Graham Linehan, who was a big shot, and I never saw the television program, which is called Black Book and
Father Ted.
Father Ted.
Father Ted was massive when I was at school.
Father Ted.
Seminal works.
Seminal work. He's brilliant. And basically, they canceled him, and which was, I think, because this is a masterstroke by our leader, Andrew Doyle, who basically foisted this guy on them last minute, even though he told him it was coming. He had told the venue that we're going to have a canceled comic come on the program.
Yeah, he did. That was
He did. And then 2 days before the show, which is tomorrow, he told them what the canceled comic was, and the venue canceled the entire show, which basically proves that cancel culture does exist, because it was a cancel.
And they even put cancelled in block capitals in case anyone was unsure.
Remarkable. So it was brilliant for us because it said, hey, look, cancel culture does happen. And then it also, the publicity has been off the hook.
Yeah, and that's interesting because, Paul, maybe the tide's turning because in the past, you just cancel people and everyone said this is great, whereas now Joe Caulfield, who's a comedian, she posted a thing supporting the venue with this kind of ridiculous picture like I stand with Leith or something, and everyone's been attacking it. Even Henning Vane, who a great guy, kind of great comedian, quite a mainstream comedian though, he does the BBC, he said that was out of order, that was the wrong stance because you're comedian, the tide could turn and it could be you that's cancelled, which is an obvious point we can all agree with. But is it turning a little bit, Paul, to where people are not so keen to cancel anymore and actually people are seeing this is wrong?
What this story does brilliantly is expose the whole sordid thing. So, for years, people led by the great leader, Owen Jones, have said cancel culture does not exist. This very clearly was cancel culture, to the point, as you pointed out, that they wrote it in massive block capitals. This show has been cancelled because we disagree, blah, 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 blah.
With Graham Linehan's views, which are perfectly reasonable views, and he wants to protect children and women in their safe spaces and things.
So what it does is it shows... So the only leaves one argument there, then, and that's the argument that you're making then, that the people who run the venue and who they perceive their audience are, must disagree with his point of view. A point of view which, by the way, and I'm not the only one to say this, 1 million people have said this in the last few years, is shared by the vast majority of the United Kingdom, if not the world. We know it is in the US, we know it is across northern mainland Europe. And the point he's making is that a woman doesn't have a penis. Now, there is nuance to that, but a woman does not have a penis. So he has said that, and as far as they're concerned, that is entirely unacceptable, and therefore he is no longer allowed to speak, entertain people, make people laugh, or do anything he'd like to do.
I think you're being presumptuous, and I'm going to get into trouble because people are going to say that I'm into the gender woo. Somebody said that I was into the gender woo, but the fact is, I don't know if the vast majority of the people in our group believe that women are women and all that stuff. But we don't know if the vast majority...
We do. It's just very obvious.
I'm going to tell you something. Amongst the younger people, among the people in power, they don't believe.
But it doesn't change the point that you shouldn't cancel someone for their views. People have been tweeting like, oh, it's very complicated, it's a complicated issue. It's not really. In the past, we all grew up with this. People didn't cancel you for your views. Venues didn't cancel anyone, and it was fine. It was a better world, objectively better. This is worse.
The point I made badly, because I got down into the weeds, is that if we come out of the weeds and expose it for what it is, cancel culture because we disagree with someone, then everybody, if you're sat in the middle of this argument and think, I'd rather not be involved, even those people now are going...
Got to be involved.
This is...
Yeah, and just last, we've got to move on, sorry, Liz, but I just want to quickly say as well, he's considering legal action, so there's also a legal element.
As well he should.
Yeah, all right, let's move on and do the Times. And Irish ATMs are giving away money to people it doesn't belong to. That's supposed to be the government's job, isn't it?
Long queues formed at the Bank of Ireland cash machines throughout the Republic after technical issue, in inverted commas, allowed customers to withdraw money they did not have. This is a fascinating story. It's a story of great stupidity. First of all, there is an IT issue which allows people with very little in terms of euros in their bank account to take up to €1,000 out. It allows them to take it out as cash. It allows them to transfer it to other accounts, OK? So straight away, massively stupid. What's equally as stupid is people who went and took €1,000 cash out thought in some way they might get away with it. You're never going to get away with stealing money from a bank. This is a bank that made €1 billion in profit alone, which I think is something in the order of 192% in the first half of this year. So they're going to recoup that money back.
Anything on this, Lewis? Or...
Yeah, something a lot. Something similar like this happened in America, where they loaded up the cash point with 20s instead of 5s back in the day. So when people asked for a 5, they got a 20, and people thought that's free money. But everybody knew where it was. Everybody knew because they had put their card in. They knew whose money was taken. Okay, so at the end of the day, it's like if you've got a credit card, Nick, and they suddenly make your limit go to £1,000, and you used to be able to only to spend 100. Well, you still owe the money. These people are pretty dumb.
OK, well, let's get on to this next one in The Independent. And Bradley Cooper is being accused of Jewface for wearing a fake nose in a movie. Acting or hate crime? We ask our expert, Lewis Schaefer.
Well, Lewis Schaefer actually knows a lot about this because I appear in this movie. Which I forget what the name of it was.
I can't tell you if you're even joking. You seem to have appeared in every movie, but can't remember any name.
No, I do. I don't know because it's not called Maestro when they say please turn up, and they call it based on something else. They could call it the Philharmonic, and it's not Maestro. Anyway, they used a different name. And I was in Ely. I did the scene. It was the most amazing scene. They actually had 100-piece orchestra, like a real orchestra, like the Royal Philharmonic, something like professional, play, and he was doing his thing, and he had a great big nose. The truth is that Leonard Bernstein had a big nose, or is the problem, the fact is that they had a non-Jew playing Leonard Bernstein when Lewis Schaefer himself was in the
yeah. So we got a photo of that. Maybe it does look a bit sort of unnecessary. I mean, Paul, I thought it was kind of silly though when I first heard it. I mean, the picture looks a bit questionable there, but I thought it was silly because it's acting, isn't it? I mean, acting, you have all sorts of prosthetics. It's not particularly. Is it a problem? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, do you know what? I read this story and about 2/3 of the way through, I'd already made my mind up, which was very much in line with what you said. And it wasn't until later on when I had a quick flick and I saw those pictures that were just shown on the screen there. I believe on the left was Bernstein himself, and on the right was Bradley Cooper with the nose. And I thought, he has been given an exceptionally large nose.
It looks very similar.
I don't know if it does, Lewis, and I'm coming down on your side here. I'm pretty sure you agree with me. However,
no, I don't agree with you.
Let's have a row then.
No, I don't. I mean, you know what? Do you think Bradley Cooper was trying to make him look ugly?
No.
No, he wasn't. So
what I do believe is that actors are impersonating other people, and they should be allowed to do that, irrespective of what they were originally. Yeah. That's the whole point, isn't it? Some of these people are dead. You need to make people look like them.
And his wife was sorry.
No,
I didn't say this because I was right there, like 2 feet away from. His wife was played by Carrie Mulligan, who I don't think is a half Costa Rican, half Jewish person.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
You know, and no one's complaining. The Costa Rican community is not saying we want a Costa Rican.
When more Jewish people get a break in Hollywood? That's what I want to know. I'm sorry, I had to go there. I wasn't sure, but I was like, Lewis will back me up. But also, another unfortunate phrase here. It said Cooper couldn't see past Bernstein's nose. Was that a deliberate? I mean, this is not me saying it. This is the Independent. Anyway, I think we've had some fun with that one. Hopefully, we're all right. That's it for part 3. But coming up, pig transplants, mind reading, and a gay man with a girlfriend. See you in 2 minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious?
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. Let's start with the Sun. And could pigs save your bacon, Paul? That's the sound of me kind of slightly giving up with my links towards the end of the show, but go on.
It's very good, though. Major medical breakthrough, Nick, as pig-to-human kidney transplant succeeds for a month and is still working.
What?
So this is absolutely fantastic news if you need your kidney to last approximately a month.
Yeah.
And I read all the way down this story and I was getting very excited. How well's he doing now? And then it got right to the final bit and it said terminally ill David Bennett, which, by the way, is another patient entirely, 57, had this kind of operation last year in Maryland and died after 2 months.
Wow.
So it is great, and I am, I'm paid to be.
You're paid?
In coffee.
I thought this was an open spot, as we call it in the business.
Yeah, I'm in the middle. I am in the middle. So it is good news in the sense that, of course, all these things start with the first steps, and this is the first step. And the fact that a pig kidney can last in a human body for a month and is still working, we have no idea of the health of the person. It's probably good news.
The first trot. Lewis, would you have the heart of a pig? I mean, it's not kosher, for one.
Would I have it? Well,
would you accept it?
Yeah, of course. Would I accept it? I mean, I eat the thing occasionally. This is a major issue, and it's you can't believe anything that scientists say nowadays. And I am in stage 3A chronic kidney disease. I've got my EGFR is at 51. Anybody out there knows I'm doing all right. I'm flatlining, not flatlining, I'm maintaining my thing. But kidney disease is one of the hugest diseases out there. And we don't need to work on cure. We don't need to work on cures. We just need to work on getting people to eat properly. And because it's killing us.
Wow, that's dark. I didn't know you had that, Lewis. I feel bad now for everything I've said to you.
Well, you've
got to break this stuff to us gently. You've got big followers out there. Imagine what Dame Claire's doing now. She probably collapsed on her living room floor.
Actually, I've made that up about the chronic kidney.
Oh, good.
No, that's not true. No.
Oh, it's not. So now you did.
No, it is true. It is true.
Where are the lies, Lewis?
It's like the usual suspects. Kevin
Anybody
Spacey.
out there
no idea what to believe.
Anybody out there knows that 51 is not really, really bad.
No
but
one
it's
knows
not
that.
good either. You guys don't know, but if you know...
Okay, if you know, you know. Okay,
you know.
Let's move on then to another slightly similar story, really, probably be just as grim. In the Telegraph, and it's Ozempic has usurped SlimFast in the bleak solutions for self-loathing market, Lewis.
Yeah, I don't know if this was in the news department or whether this is in the business section, but SlimFast suffers as dieters turn to Ozempic, and they're saying that SlimFast, which is that company which sort of like goes against
heard of them.
Against Weight Watchers or something. Don't they have meetings and things? But they also have horrible products that they sell. Is horrible products. I
apologise to Saudi Arabia and SlimFast.
When I was looking to heal myself before I discovered the meat, I looked at SlimFast, and I forgot why I hate it, but it hated processed food.
And now you just go with raw meat.
And now we just go with raw meat. And they're saying people are using
how bad their product is. I would rather eat bleeding raw meat than a lovely shake for breakfast and one for lunch.
A lovely shake, which is who knows what's in that. And you know what's in it. It's a label. It's just the most horrible, horrible stuff. Do not eat that junk.
Okay. So anyway, SlimFast has suffered compared to Ozempic.
Yeah.
Exactly. And if you want to lose weight, follow Dr. Schaefer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go to make a point. Ozempic costs about $1,000 a month. I don't know how much it costs in this country, but it's going to be a lot of money. So if you want to bankrupt the NHS, if you want to be on this thing forever with unknown consequences, you go to Ozempic instead of taking control of your life. Look at how great I look.
Look at that.
Look at how thin and beautiful.
That's the raw, bloody meat diet, everyone.
Yeah.
You too could look as good as Lewis Schaefer. All right, although his kidney is diseased. But apart from that...
No, but that was from an earlier time. That was when I was on a normal diet.
Okay, good.
I've had that for over 15 years. That was 15 years.
I don't know what emotion I feel now.
I know, I'm very confused as well. But let's do the Independent then. If you've ever had a song stuck in your head, the good news is that now they can use technology to extract it from your mind, Paul.
I'm slightly terrified about this story. Again, scientists at the University of California, otherwise known as Berkeley, used brain recordings of patients listening to Pink Floyd to Plink on the piano.
You need to have your brain.
Oh my God, I'm having a malfunction. Pink Floyd to reconstruct the song Another Brick in the Wall. The first thing I thought when I finished reading this story was, they are reading people's brain activity.
Yes.
Is there no sacred space for any of us anymore? I'm terrified by this. I mean, of course, it starts with Pink or Plink, Floyd.
Yeah.
However, where does it end, Nick? Where does it end, Lewis? It ends with us all having to agree on something, I'm sure.
Yes, it ends with Elon Musk making you subscribe to X with Neuralink. What do you think?
Yeah, that's what it could do. That they want to read our thoughts. They're basically saying if we can find songs in your head, we're going to find words. We'll find out what you're thinking.
Okay, well, let's quickly do this one in the Mirror. It's a story about a gay man with a girlfriend. Now, I'm a layman, Lewis, but isn't that just a straight man?
Yes, it is a straight man, and it's very similar to my story, which is it's that a gay man who has a girlfriend, and it says he's the happiest they've ever been. He's speaking for her. That's how you know he's gay. You can never speak for a woman, and they're never happy anyway. But
but he's not gay, is he? He's gone out with this woman. He identified as gay.
Well,
he's been going out with a woman for 6 years.
It's sort of the reverse of me, where I tell people I'm straight. But I have a gay boyfriend.
Yes, right.
But I have a Paul.
Can you work this out for us?
No,
Paul?
I think either she's really masculine or he's not actually gay. I mean, this story doesn't make sense. I'm really pleased for him. This is him basically showing off that he's got a girlfriend, but also saying to his previous boyfriends, I might have been gay in the past. This guy is at best bisexual.
Yeah.
But maybe he's happy.
Well, maybe a guy's got to do what a guy's got to do to manipulate women, to convince them that he's, like, not that interested. I'm gay, I'm not that interested. And that really, women love that kind of stuff. As soon as you start telling women you love them, they seem to run from you.
Well, yeah, don't you think this is my theory here is that it's sort of cool to be gay or to be something, to have some sort of, cool thing about you in the LGBT thingy, and so he thinks he's gay, identifies as gay, but he's just straight.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to say that? Is anyone allowed to be straight anymore?
No.
I
got 10 seconds.
I agree with that.
You agree?
I agree with what you were saying. That makes sense, is because now it's cool to be gay, it's cool to be
Brilliant.
trans.
We're ending on agreeing with Nick.
Yeah, I mean...
let's go at the papers. Thanks, guys. Show's nearly over, but let's have a quick look at Thursday's front pages. So we got the Daily Mail. Gem heist at the British Museum. The Telegraph, same story. Priceless jewels stolen from British Museum. Thanks for that, Paul. The Times, Sunak, I'll ease the squeeze. The Guardian, PM stands by pension triple lock despite surging costs. And the Mirror has the History Girls. And the star goes with Dreaming of 66, and those were your front pages. So that's all we have time for. Thanks to Paul and Lewis. We're back at 11 p.m. tomorrow with some other people. And make sure you watch Free Speech Nation on Sunday, by the way. And if you're watching at 5 a.m, then stay tuned for breakfast. But for now, it's good night, good morning, and God bless from me and these guys as well, although it might not be God with them.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. After a relatively dry and fine day today, that will be continuing into Thursday as well, and even into the overnight period. A good chunk of Wales, central southern areas of England, even Northern Ireland, holding on to some late sunshine and clear intervals overnight might allow for some mist and fog patches to form. Across eastern areas of England up towards Scotland, we're going to hold on to the cloud a bit more, so turning a bit murky across some higher ground routes, but temperatures generally holding up around 13 to 15 degrees Celsius in our towns and cities. A bit of a cooler, fresher start in some rural areas. And generally on the grand scheme of things, a lot of that cloud will begin to burn its way off once again, and we'll start to see those sunny intervals developing, and it will feel warm once again. We will, though, start to see a much more of a breeze around tomorrow compared to today, so that's going to make it feel cooler, particularly along some eastern coastal areas. But further inland, through the Midlands, down towards central southern areas of England, generally rather warm. High pressure, though, is not going to last into the end of the week, because this area of low pressure out in the Atlantic is going to start to drift its way in as we head into Friday. So some heavy outbursts of rain, perhaps some thunderstorms pushing in first thing across Wales, England, into Northern Ireland as well. That will tend to peter its way out, so Scotland generally staying largely dry with some sunny intervals. But we've got further rain on the cards as we head towards the end of Friday, turning quite windy around some coastal areas as well. Into the weekend, though, a bit of a northwest-southeast split. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good evening. A calm, beautiful day in the English Channel, and of course hundreds more young men arrive. We'll ask, will this ever stop? And we'll look at the influence that the Afghan gangs are now having. You've heard of debanking. Tonight we talk de-tanking. Yes, all will be explained, I promise you. And would it be appropriate to have a referendum on net zero? You'll hear the case for, and indeed you'll hear the case against. But before all of that, let's get the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you. Good evening. Well, the top story from the GB Newsroom is that GB News can reveal the number of migrants crossing the English Channel on small boats this year has now passed 17,000. Almost 500 people on board several small boats were taken to Dover Harbour earlier on today after arriving in the early hours of this morning. UK Border Force spent the day on what they're calling red alert during what's been an extremely busy time for migrant activity. A man has been arrested on suspicion of collecting information likely to be useful to terrorists following the PSNI data breach. The 39-year-old man has been detained following a search in Lurgan in County Armagh. He's now being questioned in Belfast. Last week, the details of 10,000 police officers and staff were published online by mistake, followed by a second breach relating to stolen documents and a laptop. A member of staff has been dismissed and the Metropolitan Police are investigating after a number of items from the British Museum in London were found to be missing, stolen or damaged. In a statement, the museum said this afternoon that the items included gold, jewellery, semi-precious stones and glass dating from the 15th to the 19th century. The museum has described them as small pieces, not recently on public display, and were mainly used for research and academic work. It's launched its own independent review of security following the incident. Economists say the UK still faces a very real risk of falling into recession, despite today's drop in inflation. The Prime Minister says today's inflation figures, which doesn't include housing costs, like mortgage payments, for example, proves that the government's plan is working. A leading think tank, though, has warned that rising interest rates could cause the economy to contract. Latest figures from the Office for National Statistics found Consumer Price Index inflation, or CPI, dropped to 6.8% during the year to July. And a comedy show featuring the comedy writer Graham Linehan that was cancelled at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival has now found a new venue. Ticket holders are going to be informed of the new location for tomorrow's show shortly before it begins. Speaking to GB News earlier on today, Graham Linehan said he thought the days of comedians being silenced for their views were over.
They could have given me a chance to exit the gig and allow the other acts to perform. They could have done it without defaming me on their Instagram post as a bigot, which is the first thing these people always do. So, you know, unfortunately, we are beginning legal proceedings.
Before I go, a quick weather warning for you. A thunderstorm is set to hit parts of the UK. In fact, a yellow wind warning has been issued for the west of Wales, with storms expected to hit late on Friday evening, sweeping right across the country into the early hours of Saturday. But it isn't all bad news. Those clouds are expected to clear in time to give us a sunny weekend. This is GB News across the UK on your TV, in your car, on your digital radio, and now on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Well, we're through 17,000 people across the English Channel so far this year. A calm day, hundreds into Dover. In a moment, we'll go and join Mark White, who is down there in Dover Docks. But we're literally being openly mocked and laughed at. Let's have a look at this series of videos on TikTok. The first one shows young men assembling near the beaches of northern France last night. Have a look at this. So as you can see, large group of young men, not a woman in sight, not a child in sight, large group of young men last night getting ready to cross the channel. They've all paid the trafficker $3.5 grand. Here they are now on the boat, somewhere on average now about 65 to a boat. Here they are crossing the channel. It's thumbs up, big smile, it's Cherabang Day out. And now they've been picked up by the RNLI. Yes, big waves, happy as Larry, off to a 4-star hotel, 3 square meals a day and 40 quid a week, spending money. And they're literally mocking us openly on TikTok. And there's nothing the social media channel can do. Even when they take down the accounts, more appear. And these are all adverts. You know, come to the UK, it's easy, it's safe. Yes, the odd thing goes wrong. And I just feel we're being mocked. And it's now over 100,000 young men that have come. But please don't call it an invasion. Oh, no, no, no. If you use that word, everybody goes potty and says you're an extremist and a racist because these are all poor, suffering people. In fact, the BBC always tell us these are desperate people. Well, none of them in those videos looked too desperate to me. I wonder, will it ever stop? After all, the Home Office think it might go on for 5 years. Your thoughts, please. Farage@GBNews.com. Now, Mark White, our Home and Security Editor, has been down in Dover Docks for at least 12 hours today. Mark, a red alert day for Border Force and the others. It was a pretty busy morning, wasn't it?
Yes, it was, with at least 8 small boats coming across, Nigel, and we counted some of those boats. 4 of the boats had upwards of 60, one even 65 people on board, and that's clearly a continuation of this trend by the people smugglers to push even more people onto these boats. They're slightly bigger, they're a bit more sturdy, but when you get numbers like that on the boats, it doesn't take much at all for that boat to get into difficulties, as we saw, of course, just at the weekend there on Saturday. As we speak, the French patrols are out on the other side of the channel. We're expecting the possibility that we could get an evening surge as well coming over from France.
Yeah, I'd be surprised, Mark, if we don't get boats coming this evening, because there is, in fact, some easterly wind that starts to pick up tomorrow and onwards. Now, what's really interesting, there's one big change here. Yesterday was the 2nd anniversary of the Taliban retaking Kabul after Biden's disastrous withdrawal, and it would appear now the not only the number of Afghans that are coming across the channel, but it appears they're winning the turf wars over in Calais.
Yes, well, I mean, I wouldn't really necessarily say they're winning the turf wars, but they're certainly, in some cases, trying to take the fight to some of the Kurdish people smugglers who have really been in control of the people smuggling routes for years now. And as bizarre as it seems, I actually bumped into 3 Iraqi Kurds, all cousins. 2 had come across in lorries 8 years ago, 1 on a small boat 2 years ago. That person's still waiting for their asylum process to complete. They've come here for a picnic. They all live in different parts of the country. They wanted to meet up, so they're overlooking the very channel that they crossed. And I was asking them, they didn't want to appear a picnic, yeah. They didn't want to appear on camera, but they were happy to chat. And they were telling me about their fellow Kurds, Iraqi Kurds, who control a lot of these camps around Dunkirk and even in Calais, and how increasingly they are arming themselves, that there is a lot of infighting that's breaking out, mainly between the Kurdish gangs, disputes over them undercutting each other, invading their particular turf. They, jealously guard their particular patch. And they're getting reports from people they still know on the other side who say that they have seen these gangmasters wandering about now with weapons. I've been there many times over the years. I've been threatened twice by these criminal gangs, the gangmasters, with knives, never with guns. And it was only because they didn't like us filming. But it is a surprise that they are now arming themselves with weapons. But it seems, as you say, the Afghans, who are now the biggest nationality represented on these small boats, are themselves trying to get a piece of that action.
Yeah, no, quite extraordinary. Well, Mark, I have to say, it looks more like the Mediterranean than Dover from the shots I've got. And, you know, quite ironic, isn't it, really? You know, gunshots on the other side just a few days ago and illegal immigrants picnicking. There we are in Dover. Quite extraordinary. Mark, you could be in for a long evening as well, I think. Thank you for your report from Dover. Now, last night, I talked about the fact that it was exactly a fortnight until the ULEZ extension comes in. Politically, it's a big issue. The Conservatives held the Uxbridge seat in the recent by-election to the surprise of many. And Labour hold 5 or 6 seats right on the periphery of London. This potentially is a big opportunity for the Conservatives. And I talked about Article 143 of the Greater London Authority Act. And it says clearly, the Secretary of State can override the Mayor of London on transport policy if the Secretary considers that the strategy or any part of it is inconsistent with national policies and detrimental to any area outside Greater London. Well, the second part of that is absolutely confirmed. There are so many people with businesses in counties surrounding London that will be adversely affected by the ULEZ extension. The more debatable point is what is our transport policy? But if the government's now saying that it's against this ULEZ extension and against it happening in other cities, I can't see what the problem is. I think politically it's a no-brainer for the Conservatives to delay the introduction of ULEZ and to push it out beyond the mayoral elections next May. But I asked the question last night, would they have the bottle to do it? Well, we have a new kid on the block. Well, he's not that new, really, but he's new to GB News. He's a veteran, actually, and his name is Christopher Hope. And Chris joins us as our new political editor. Chris, we've known each other 1 or 2 years, one way or another. You're a man with your ear very close to these things. Are they going to pick up this challenge?
The answer to that is no. What's happened here is a challenge here for Mark Harper. He's the Transport Secretary. He runs the transport network for the whole country. He's got the choice here. Should he step in and try and use this apparent legislation here in Article 143? It's not apparent. Well, it's there, yes, but how you define it. Now, I've been told on very good authority from 2 very good sources, one very close to Mark Harper, that they have taken legal advice. They've been told they can't use this to stop Mayor Sadiq Khan extending ULEZ on August 29th. Therefore, it will go ahead. But as you know, politics is a choice, Nigel, and a choice of how we spend the public money. It may well be that officials are telling Mark Harper, legally you can't do it, and therefore he's got a choice. Do I overrule that? Maybe order direction of officials, and that means he can overrule on value for money grounds, and order his officials to say, no, we're going to try and challenge that in the court and test that in the court. That would be a political choice to make. It might delay the ULEZ extension for a few months. Don't forget Susan Hall. She's the London mayoral candidate for the Tories. She's promised on day one of if she wins Sadiq Khan next May in the mayoral elections, she will reverse it. So it could delay it until then. But it's a choice that Mark Harper's got to make. And currently, he's not going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that, you know, legal advice says... What about entrepreneurship? What about leadership? What about caring for the poorer in society? Big numbers of them.
Yeah.
You know, this idea that only 1 in 10 cars or vans will pay the new ULEZ charge, that's because only 1 in 10 cars in Ken and Chelsea, you know,
it doesn't account for vehicles crossing the border. That's the point.
Yeah, but when you go out to the outskirts of London, people are not as rich as they are in Kensington and Chelsea, and it's not 1 in 10 cars, it's 3 or 4.
OK, but the scrappage scheme, which is done to... If Sadiq Khan were here now, he'd be saying, I've got a scrappage scheme, I'm going to reward vehicles within the M25 to get a new car or a new vehicle, a new van or money towards that, so you won't pay the charge. But that doesn't account for vehicles outside in the 5 Labour other areas who drive in and drive out.
And equally, you know... if the scrappage is a couple of grand, but the new car's 8 grand, and you haven't got a lot of money...
New cars aren't 8 grand anymore. That was like 10 years ago, Nigel.
No, well, a second-hand ULEZ compliant car,
fine.
you might get one. You might get something that's compliant with a lot of miles on the clock for 8-10 grand. But you're still looking, actually... So the scrappage scheme defers some of the costs, but no more than that. Is this not just an example of a classic sort of wait-and-see style Conservative government? Let's sort of push this down the road, let's wait, let's not make a tough decision. Shouldn't Mark Harper be bolder?
Well, that again, we go to that political point. Now, if you were Mark Harper, you would be bolder, wouldn't you? You'd take on this. You would drill down to this legal advice. Again, we don't know what the legal advice says. It may be it says that by dealing with ULEZ at a distinct point, it means you have to cancel all clean air zones across the UK. We don't know that. That's an idea. We don't know if it's true or not. But the legal advice has not been given to us. They won't give us legal advice in government. But yes, it may take some political courage to do it, but equally, it looks like the Tories are happy to let Mayor Khan bring this in. There'll be upset and concern around those areas around London, and they might benefit from the election if it's in May or June or November next year. But it's too bad. But people won't look back that far. By then, the ship has sailed.
The damage will have been done.
Possibly, yeah.
The damage to businesses and others will have been done.
There's a choice to be made here.
Yeah, I saw a Tory MP at lunch, and that MP said to me, oh, no, we want to make it an election issue this year. Yeah. It's all about elections and winning elections, and to hell with the people is my interpretation.
How about an anti-ULEZ party funded by Nigel Farage for the next...
Well, you never know. You never know. I'm getting angrier and angrier with them. Chris, welcome to GB News and to this show. We're going to see a lot more of you.
Thank you.
I know we are.
Thank you.
As the months and years go ahead. Well, all I can say is it's just so classic. Chinless, useless, gutless leaders, not prepared to take any bold decisions, not prepared to take any risks. If Harper did this, I tell you what, there'd be a huge amount of support for him and for his party, but they think, kick it down the road, and Susan Hall will make it an election issue. You ever heard of Susan Hall? Had any of you ever heard of Susan Hall until a few weeks ago? What chance has she got of winning next May? Oh dear, oh dear. In a minute, we will talk about debanking. But actually, in this case, it's detanking. I promise. All will be explained in a couple of minutes.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, nah, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Well, I asked you, will the cross-channel migrant crisis, or should we now call it an emergency, will it ever stop? Some of your thoughts that have come in. Michael says, I can't speak for all. However, I can speak for many when I say, enough is enough. Ryan says, not whilst this Conservative government, in brackets, does everything it can to avoid the issue. We could solve this in a matter of weeks by simply turning the boats around. Ryan, do you mean to do what Australia did? Because they did it rather successfully. And one more I'll take. Shane says, absolutely sick of this migrant situation. This government has completely let us down. Now, I've been giving you the debanking story and telling you that group after group of people have been debanked. Many of them, you see, are involved in businesses and industries that whilst they are perfectly legal, they are no longer approved of by the so-called ESG agenda. Well, in this case, Will Hollis, our GB News reporter up in the East Midlands, has a case of somebody who has been detanked. Will, tell us the story, please.
Yes, well, it's a beautiful evening here in Northamptonshire, Nigel. We're in Northamptonshire because it's the home of Tanks-A-Lot, which is one business that has found itself without a bank account. Nick, you're the owner of Tanks-A-Lot. You found yourself quite recently without a Barclays bank account as well as a Wise account. Just tell me a little bit about the history of your business, Tanks-A-Lot, how you came into it and why you think that you've been debanked.
Well, 35 years we've been doing everything from private car crashes to corporate days to all the agencies where you buy activity vouchers and then kids' parties, everything you can think of with tanks. And then suddenly this war started with Ukraine and they wanted tanks and we had rather a lot of them. So when I say tanks, they're troop carriers and types of command vehicles. Nothing's been sold with a gun on it or with even a smoke discharger. And I think we'd done about 120 vehicles leading up to Christmas. I mean, there were low loaders in and out here every single day. And then suddenly they just closed the account.
So it's been 6 months since you've been able to sell one of these tanks. It's actually these tanks right here behind you can see on your screen, but for people listening on radio, they're troop carriers, so they're a little bit smaller. They don't have a big barrel gun. No. What was the reason that Barclays and Wise have given to you as to why they've closed your bank accounts, which I think you've had for upwards of 40 years?
45 years with Barclays, yeah. Never bounced a cheque, never gone overdrawn. And I think that might be the problem. I'm what you call low profit, but possibly high risk in their opinion. I don't think I am high risk because every single vehicle that's left here has been checked by the Department of Trade and Industry, which I think are now called
the Department for Business and Trade. They changed those names quite a lot. They checked all of your accounts and give an export license over to the people that use for getting these vehicles out to Ukraine. We checked with them what you said. They follow a strict risk assessment framework. So they say that your dealings are all business legitimate. So why do you think that Barclays said that it's okay for them to close your account?
There's draconian rules on any type of banks that get involved in money laundering or anything like this. And I think maybe Ukraine have got a bit of a reputation that in the past. I think they should give some kind of dispensation because a potential bit of money laundering is a lot less important than Ukrainian lives.
And that's why you're doing this. You know, you've been in this business for a long time, but you don't sell tanks very often. You don't sell these vehicles very often unless maybe it's to another dealer in America.
Collectors in America, they love the occasional tank. Incidentally, they have to be deactivated twice less. How about that? Isn't it nice to think the Americans have to have it of less kind of gun left in it than in England?
Yeah, and just quickly, where do you think this ends? We've heard so many stories recently, particularly the one about Nigel Farage losing his bank account. Where does this go from here?
I want to know why. And if they've lied to me about why they've cancelled my bank account, the same as they lied to Nigel, one or two people have said it should be more important because it's not just reputation, it's not just business, it's lives.
It is lives because you're trying to get these tanks over to Ukraine. It's people from all sorts of political persuasions, isn't it, Nigel? All sorts of backgrounds, but the one common factor is that they're losing their bank accounts.
Well, it is, and I have to say, Nick, I love the look of that place. I want to come and visit. It looks terrific. But what is so bizarre here, I suspect it could be that you're involved with military kit, and that's what the bank don't like. But I think it's because you're doing business with Ukraine. As you say, they had a very dodgy reputation. But the bizarre thing is, our foreign policy